and to the kind of people at the Poetry Library. So any opportunity to speak about boxing, I'm always all over it. It's a great pleasure to talk about it. I'm a poet. I've been publishing maybe the last 5 years or so, but since I was 3 years of age I've been a martial artist. My grandfather and my dad were wrestlers. So I started boxing maybe about the age of 13, but because I've wrestled since I was 3, I've always felt like I was an outsider in boxing. I've been in and outside gyms for maybe 15 years now, but I still don't feel like it's a sport that's really close to me. And I think the reason for that is the same reason why I love it so much and I want to kind of write about it and engage in it in avant-garde poetry, which is the kind of poetry I utilise, and that's because of paradoxes. I think boxing is a completely unique realm of paradoxes. The first time one encounters boxing and sees it, it has the appearance of an a priori kind of physicality. It seems like it's completely natural, that boxing would be the innate action of people in aggressive situations. But if you watch children, they wrestle and they club each other or headbutt or bite. Boxing is actually an incredibly learned skill. It's incredibly technical, and when you find yourself doing it for the first time, as I'm sure some of you have done, you realise every instinct you have is completely wrong. That you want to turn away, that you want to punch with your rear hand, and so forth and so on. So there's an incredible paradox from the kind of physical beginnings of what boxing is. And then that leads into the kind of cultural understanding of boxing. Boxing is fed on narratives. We buy it. Especially now we buy it like a capitalist product. We have two boxers who inhabit roles, and they actually act to those roles. You have a journeyman and the house boxer. You have the champion and the challenger. And actually boxers psychologically are affected by these narratives, and it actually permeates into the reality of the sport. And so when we watch it, and any of you who've been to a boxing match will see this, the crowd really doesn't engage with the boxer as a human being who's expressing themselves the way that crowd member would. They see the boxer as this thing that represents these ideas, and that's why the art that kind of permeates off boxing is so heavy with metaphor. But the actual experience of boxing is perhaps the most overwhelmingly physical and phenomenological thing you can do. That contrast is incredible, and that leads to this terrible kind of third contradiction, which is the only thing about boxing which really kind of hurts me. And that is the vestige of a 19th century lack of mercy for boxers with a sport which is wholly 21st century in its nutrition and its sports science and its physicality. If a boxer quits because he pulls, like Klitschko, the younger Klitschko brother, pulled his hamstring earlier on in his career and was labelled a quitter for 15 years, or Victor Ortiz, or there's a great boxer called Tor Hamer at the moment who got a degree, which is a rare thing, and he was marketed because he was an educated man. He quit recently. People telling him to retire, that he doesn't belong in the sport. Boxers are expected to die in the ring in the 21st century. That's an incredible contradiction with the supposed passion and love people have for the personalities of boxers. People talk about Otto Agati and these fighters who pop up on the screen that we love so much, but we're also at a time in our culture where we understand cognitive neuroscience, and we know for a fact in the last 5 years, big Harvard study done about American football. American footballers were retiring, and an incredible volume of them were having psychotic episodes, murder-suicides. The Football Union of American Footballers sued the NFL, had this massive study conducted, and then they linked it to professional wrestling. Chris Benoit, I don't know if you heard about Chris Benoit, killed his kids and his wife after he retired. And they found that direct impact on the grey matter of the brain was changing people's personalities. And what is a boxer's experience of grey matter damage? The glove being the very worst thing in boxing, in my mind. As someone, I only ever competed professionally as a mixed martial artist with tiny gloves. You punch someone in the face with a tiny glove long enough, your hand breaks. You punch someone with a boxing glove for 36 minutes, your hand never breaks, but they get knocked out. Their brain is rattling in their skull non-stop for 36 minutes. That's the reality of boxing, and what's the perception? It's like a video game, like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. But people's personalities are being changed in front of our eyes when we watch boxing. When you know that and you look into the research, I watch boxing matches now. You see George Groves versus Carl Froch. These people, depending on their predetermined genetic traits, they're changing in front of your eyes. Their kids will talk to them at 50 and they won't remember their names. I mean, that's a fact. And the huge part of our boxing, which is so incredibly paradoxical, is also used to treat depression patients. We use box exercise to help people, and it's a route out of working class oppression for other people, and it should be taught in schools. So this is an incredible liminal space that boxing inhabits, where all these different things clash up against each other. So yeah, that's what interests me, it's what excites me about it. So I'll just read a few of the poems from a book I published a few years ago called Fight. And basically the way I've approached boxing, because I'm very sensitive to the idea that most art and most poetry, especially about boxing, really feeds into the romanticism, the bardic tradition about boxing, about celebrating these great boxers. And I wanted to do something that was much more externalized, that used details of their lives, their languages, their personas, their entities as real human beings, and kind of create these fragmentary poetic pictures of these boxers specifically. So Fights and all my works on boxing are actually all suites of poems centered around single boxers. So I published this one called Johnny Tapia, which is just 15 poems about Johnny Tapia, and this book is 15 suites of 15 poems about 15 boxers. So I'll just read a couple from a few of the different suites about different boxers. I won't go into too much detail about each poem, hopefully they speak for themselves, or hopefully not perhaps. So this is from the suite about Artur Abraham, the Armenian-German middleweight boxer. Playground. Artur Abraham still beat Edison Miranda with a broken jaw. Clearly it could be seen from the video footage a looseness, a freedom the jaw shouldn't have, the dentismal argument one lip had with another, the teeth refusing to align, the loss in his expression for his mouth was permanently open, caught light by a slash of coloured gumshoe. The jaw is the jaw of David. It is an emissary of an exultant young woman and mother to be wrapped in red leather on the crib of a mountain, amongst the sons who knew death as a thievery coil, as marker, who bore this jaw as a testament to the extant that cannot be shattered beyond the shrift. The jaw is an unreliable tool of expression. Its appearance cannot be trusted. His eyes spoke otherwise. His insistence is the colour of stone marble. His stubborn fix abated bare. The decision was open to contention, but Abraham still won and crushed Miranda in the rematch. Proud stands the son of Artur Abraham in the German playground. This is from the series about Antonio Margarito. Nazim Richardson to Shane Mosley between rounds 4 and 5. Now listen, you landed some good shots up top, but we got to remember how this started. We set them up with the body shots. See, this guy ain't used to getting it back in the body. Take that jab, keep popping him up, stab him in his heart, rip around them sides. We're going to show him how he got to slow down when he hit the pedal. There ain't going to be no gas in the car at the end of this. Your combinations, Shane, nobody in this division hands as fast as yours. Run them combinations, knock the grease off this dude, and then swim without getting wet, slide till you stick, slide till you angle. This is from the suite about Michael Katsidis, and it's got an epigram, by Alvaro de Campos. You can be happy in Australia as long as you don't go there. Blood and guts. Some clear the woods for a blood spring, some make a home when others rot, some gloves are laced with veins, some eyes swell black and smile, some faces swell feline, some drink it in the bitumen, some punch for organs, liver, kidneys, heart and lungs, some attend the funeral of a bicep, some are not afraid to piss blood, some feet are set black stockinged, some arms are snakes, some shoulder you into the corner, some backs are grim with sun gristle with wet sweat thick, some punches come in bunches, some fists make whiskers brittle, some come on, some talk, some come on and cannot be dissuaded, some swim in blood and smile, some come to life in trench coat, and then you are alone with them. This poem is from the cycle about Jack Dempsey. I will have a boxer's funeral without ever having been a boxer. While my place of work means nothing to me, and when one has come as far as I in nothing, the bird-sized tragedy of waking fear blooms into a heat, a bale of squid ink, a warm river multicoloured and sewage-filled. Set forth a jack rapped on knuckles, knowing force forth to punch those snivelling tooths, the brain cancer grime left on our cleaners, the horrific stomach pains after the body shot, the herniation like one is going to prolapse, the heavy breathing, the praying for it to end, and the relentless memory that it was Jack Dempsey inspiring some gobshite to slam a bag that has resulted in your shitting hot needles. So this is a job of work, a disappointment nexus, heartfelt, a diary of sponge and sewers and pain, a hope so brittle and useless it runs like uncooked egg, like birth fluid, like a nosebleed, for we are not Jack Dempsey. We relent easier than he, soft-knuckled and slim-browed. We give up and quit and are left labours of regret, night work at the abattoir, shifting on with chop, guarding the beef field corpse and pissing vinegar in curses, reminded that we watched Rocky as children and not tapes of Dempsey Woolard. So our lies, our amateur inspiration, and acting that kills a man after men, as does the routine of reminder that we aren't strong enough to live through serious illness or collective hardships. So boxing in its warbling fury sheds light on the weakest too. And one last one. This is about Edwin Valero. If you know anything about Edwin Valero. And it makes sense. Death of the fire god. A man's heart is red by the flag tattooed upon his chest, and heaven and earth laboured, and the crimson sea laboured, and in the sea the reed laboured, and from the reed's tip smoke rose, and from the reed's tip flame rose, and in the flame a youth was running. He had a hair of fire, a beard of flame, and his eyes were suns, and what we do know, he would have rather died in the ring. Cool, thanks for your time.